Welcome to episode 51, where I'm going to walk through everything I did to take this fireplace and turn it into this. I'm going to walk you through all the steps, the tips, and tricks that I discovered along the way in case you have a fireplace of your own that you would like to make over. The first thing you want to do is prep your area. So you want to lay your builder paper down and tape it off with masking tape. Then you're going to want to clean your fireplace really well. I used my vacuum's brush attachment, but if you didn't have that, you could use a broom and dust it off really well. Now you're going to start mixing up your mortar. I like to use gloves for this because this product can be really drying on your hands. Plus it also helps protect your manicure. I used a simple white mortar here. I have it linked below for you. And you want to go ahead and add water to the powder mortar until you get a consistency that is kind of like a whipped peanut butter. Unfortunately, I didn't have exact measurements, so you'll have to just mix it and kind of feel it out from there. I will say there were a couple different times where I mixed this up and had to add a little more mortar or had to add a little bit more water. One thing that you'll find is really helpful is using a grout mixing paddle. I picked this up at Home Depot. Again, everything's listed below. And it'll take a good 4 or 5 minutes to mix all this up thoroughly. You want to make sure that it's nice and smooth and creamy. You don't want to have any lumps or chunks in the mixture. And you'll also be mixing your mortar batches in small batches. So you'll work with just a little bit at a time because otherwise it'll start to dry out on you. And in my case, I wanted to fill in all the gaps between the stones with mortar so I could have a nice smooth finish. So in this case here, you're seeing me fill up the grout installation bag using a trowel. This part can get a little messy. I just kept my gloves on the whole time for this job. And also, I suggest this below, but you want to go ahead and have a few of these bags on hand. I did have one that the seam kind of busted out on me while I was doing this, so you want to make sure to have some spares of that as well as sponges. It's also really handy to keep a bucket with warm water so you can rinse your hands off. Okay, up next, we're going to go ahead and start filling in between the stones. And I do apologize in the order of this video. Some of the steps that I did are in different areas of the fireplace. You're going to want to start in one area and move throughout the fireplace and not jump around. It's just the way that I ended up recording these parts. One tip though I have with where you start is go ahead and start in an inconspicuous area. So an area that maybe you can't view as easily, maybe over in a corner or something like that. Just because there is a little bit of a tiny learning curve with this. It's pretty straightforward and easy, but I just think that's always a good tip with really any project. And I recommend working in about a 3 feet by 3 feet section at a time and going through all the steps first before moving on to the next section. And you can see it does not have to be perfect at all. Once I get these all filled in, I'm gonna go in with a chip brush and just kind of smooth out the mortar there. And I use a spray bottle here with water just to kind of help the mortar spread a little bit easier. And next I use this larger brush by Annie Sloan to just kind of move the mortar and just kind of get some coverage over the stones. And again, you're going to work in small sections after you've placed the mortar in between all of the stones. You use your chip brush to smooth it out, and then you go in and do this step afterwards. So you want to kind of just get like a nice coverage, but not necessarily 100% opaque. You'll see later when I go back in and I use a sponge to just kind of remove a little bit of the mortar, just to give it more of a multi-dimensional finish versus having it all one color. And just keep dipping your brush into a little bit of water if you find that the mortar's not wanting to move very easily for you. This part is actually probably one of the easier parts of this whole process. And then just go back through and see if there's any empty spots that you missed. You can just add a little bit more mortar too. I just did it with my finger here, just nice and easy. And next up, you're gonna go ahead and use your sponge. Dip your sponge in water, wring it out, and then just go ahead and hit some of the areas. This is kind of where a little bit of artistry can come into place, just so you have some nice variation in the stones and nothing's completely covered. This is, of course, a preference. If you wanted it to completely to be covered, you could certainly do that as well. And then moving on to the part of the fireplace where you can sit down, what I did was I sprayed the grout lines with water, and then I painted those with my Benjamin Moore Simply White paint, just to give it kind of like a soft finish on the grout lines. And then it's not pictured, but I did go ahead and roll the paint directly onto those large stones there. And that was the final step. So the whole project in total took me about 22 hours to complete. And I wanted to share my paint colors here with you. And thank you so much for watching, and have fun with this project if you decide to do your own fireplace.